I didn't like the PS1 version of WCW Nitro, and I really wasn't expecting too much from the N64 version, but my god, it, it just was really, really bad. This is the first wrestling game for the N64 that I'll be looking at, and I really hope that the other ones get significantly better than this, because this game borders on being unplayable. The N64 version of WCW Nitro came out in 1999. It took them a little over a year to complete this port, and they combined it with WCW Thunder. So you have two terrible games that come together to make something that's somehow worse than what it was before. Just like the other two games that Inland Productions made, there is no storyline. This is more of an arcade game. There are no grapple moves in this, so you don't have any lockups. It's just really painful to play, and I'm assuming it's really hard to watch. I don't think I was able to pull off anything in this. It was just really, really terrible. The controls in this game are just the worst thing that I have ever experienced. I know there are other games that have bad controls, but this is just horrible. I was able to at least get used to the PS1 controls for both Thunder and Nitro, but this one, they just felt really unresponsive, and it made me wonder if my controller was broken. So I tried a few different N64 controllers. None of them seemed to, do anything. And yeah, I was able to punch and kick. I could do a few moves, but most of them just didn't want to come out. It was a very miserable experience, and it just left me feeling like, maybe I don't want to go through the N64 games. I probably should have started with something I actually knew and wanted to play, but man, this was horrible. So WCW Nitro does have a decent roster of wrestlers. You've got some great names on there, and the initial roster is really good. And then you have a bunch of other wrestlers that you can unlock, assuming that you want to play this game for any amount of time, and not just, turn it off and move on to any of the other wrestling games, which are all better than this one. The game does have a bunch of game modes in it, which is nice. Unfortunately, you end up fighting both your opponent and the controls in this, so it's really not worth it. WCW Nitro is just a terrible port of an awful game. The gameplay is horrible, and yeah, I really hated it. That's probably the nicest thing I can say, is I hated the game. Let's move on to the graphics. For an N64 game in 1999, it looks okay. It's not going to blow anyone away. It doesn't look as good as some of the PS1 games, especially those released in 99 and 2000. I don't think this even looks as good as WCW Mayhem. It's just a decent-looking N64 game. It's not amazing, it's not awful, it's just fine. While it does lack the FMV from the PS1 game, it still looks okay for the time. It's really disappointing that the N64 had to cut out all of the FMVs for all of their games. That's just the way it was. It's a technical limitation for the cartridges, but yeah, everything in this looks okay. The ring looks good. I wish there were ring entrances, but I kind of understand why they had to cut them out. The wrestlers look decent for the time period. Honestly, the graphics are the only real bright spot I could see in this. They look okay. I'm going to move on before I just keep repeating myself. WCW Nitro on the N64 is just a mess. It wasn't a bad idea to try to combine this with Thunder, so maybe they would make something that was even halfway decent out of two pieces of crap, but unfortunately Inland Productions didn't do that. They made something that is somehow worse than both products that they tried to pull from. It has a bunch of wrestlers to unlock. It has a pretty decent roster. I think the graphics look okay. There's a bunch of game modes that you can play, but I don't think anybody would want to play this for any amount of time. It's just a really bad wrestling game that came about from being the product of two other bad wrestling games being shoved together. It's just really terrible. I was really struggling to find something even remotely nice to say about this. It's just an awful game. And unfortunately, I decided to start with this one when I was going through all the N64 games, but at least I know it can't get worse than this. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.